Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting the order of the water buffalo. No, I'd like to call the meeting the Waynesboro City Council. Can we stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Ms. Williams.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you all for coming out tonight. If I'd have known it just took bringing Mr. Wilmot in here, we'd have invited him a long time ago just to get the attendance in here. First item up is to approve our meeting or adopt our meeting agenda tonight. Has everyone had a chance to review our meeting agenda?
Yes.
Is there a motion to approve our meeting agenda?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Dr. Hossetter. Thank you, Mr. Short. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you very much. Item number 4 is matters for mayor. I don't have a lot this week. I was gone last week, but I do know that I was told today that our A Street project is near complete, and I think we're going to have an opening here before too long, Mr. Ham.
If that's council's pleasure, we need to, if the body wants to have a ceremony there, we'd be happy to organize that, and
I think we just opened the road for the citizens. They'll be happy with that.
we'll stick with that then.
All right, let's go with that move. Do any of the members of City Council have any matters they want to bring forth tonight?
You know I do.
Come on. Well, I know you do. I don't like it because he's wearing his mask.
Yeah, my mask is back. Although our numbers generally for COVID have been low, the CDC has moved us back into the yellow range. And so out of respect for those with immune problems or other health issues, I'm going to wear my mask in the yellow range as well. The bigger news probably is that Virginia and the southeast of the United States in general is a hotbed for flu right now. So if you have not gotten the flu shot, I encourage you to go ahead and do that because we are seeing lots of flu. Most folks are handling it fairly well. I've not heard that hospitalizations are up significantly, but you know, if there are more people that get it, that percentage of folks that are hospitalized gets bigger. So I encourage folks, if they have not yet gotten their flu shot, particularly as we go into the holiday season. If you'll be traveling, if family will be coming to you, if friends or folks coming out of town, you know, in the beginning of the bubble, the beginning of the pandemic, we talked about your bubble. And holiday time is when our bubbles get bigger. So again, protect yourself. If you have not gotten an up-to-date COVID vaccine, I would encourage you to do that as well. And they still are available at pharmacies and at your doctor's offices oftentimes. Otherwise, I would say we had a successful election last week. I think it went well. I was around a couple polling places. As you may know, it did not turn out the way I was expecting or hoping, but I think it was run successfully and a great demonstration of how people can do things civilly and take care of each other. So I was glad to see that and see the upcoming things that the council will be handling on that way. So. All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Dr. Hosstetter. Just following on that, I would like to welcome Kenny Lee and Dwight Wood. They'll be taking over.
Jimmy.
Pardon?
Jim.
Did I say Dwight?
Yes, you did.
Dwight and Wood. Jim Wood. Jim and Kenny, they'll be taking over 2 seats up here, mine and Dr. Hosstetter's in January. So congratulations on your wins, and we wish you success in governing the city. Now that brings us to item number 6. Item number 6 is to consider approving the consent agenda. Has everyone had a chance to review it? Mm-hmm. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Ms. Williams.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you all very much. And then item number 7, I believe, is the reason we have the whole auditorium in here filled, is to recognize and honor Mr. Christopher Wilmot for his contributions to the city of Waynesboro, Virginia. Mr. Wilmot, we're going to present you with a certificate of recognition, and it's signed by every council member here. So if you'd join me up front, I'd like to read this with you. All right, certificate of recognition to Mr. Christopher E. Wilmot. Whereas Mr. Christopher E. Wilmot, commonly known as Chris, an outstanding native citizen of Waynesboro, is being recognized for his unmatched historical knowledge, contributions, dedication, love, and warmth that he freely and enthusiastically extends to the city of Waynesboro, its citizens, and its visitors. Whereas Chris has been a productive ambassador and a longtime community volunteer and advocate. He has been an untiring supporter of numerous programs, projects, committee dedicated, and enhancing the offering of Waynesboro to its citizens, visitors alike. Whereas Chris has produced a madrid of videos and photos, posts, and media on public media platforms, social media platforms, branding the city of Waynesboro as a destination to visit or creating nostalgia for a small place he calls home. And whereas his branding, marketing, and promotion of the city of Waynesboro, local businesses, schools, and projects is vital support for economic development and historic preservation. And whereas served 4 years in the United States Navy as a signalman E-4, being honorably discharged in 1975. I want to shake your hand on that one. Happy Veterans Day. Whereas he has distinguished himself a stellar employee of the United States Postal Service for 28 years, 3 years in Charlottesville, Virginia, 25 years in Waynesboro, retiring in 2003. Whereas, in addition, Chris has served as on several historic preservation committees in Augusta County. Chris is currently the president of the Rosenwald School Family Reunion Association. And whereas, sharing his broad scope of local history with wholehearted enjoyment has enabled people interested in learning about their own family history or connections to their past. Now, therefore, I, Bobby Henderson, Mayor, along with the Waynesboro City Council, do hereby deem it an honor and a pleasure to extend thanks and appreciation with this certificate of recognition. Mr. Christopher E. Wilmot, for all of his achievements, unflinching love, advocacy for the city of Waynesboro, and sincere congratulations and best wishes for many happy and more productive years. In witness thereof, I do by set my hand on the cause the seal of Waynesboro to be affixed to this certificate this 14th day of November 2022, and it's signed by each council member. Now, I do want to say how I first met Mr. Wilmot, or Chris. I was running for office in 2018. I attended a council meeting that night before I was on council, just getting an idea of what's going on here. I went to Sierra's Pizza, and while I'm ordering my pizza, Mr. Wilmot came up to me and said, "Mr. Henderson, you're running for city council. You need to know some things about our city." 2 hours later, I left Sierra's Pizza. I get a lot of knowledge. I got to know a lot about Rosenwald Community Center, about the historic communities in our city, and I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
What do you have to say? Yeah, that's right.
Hey, I would like to say something though. And, other than the mayor, the council.
Excuse me.
Hey, Chris?
You want to take the mic?
Yes, sir. place where the people at home can hear
Well,
what
then I
you're
want
saying.
to see. I want to see loud.
Well, yeah, if you get the podium there, they'll pick up the microphone, and the cameras at home will get you.
Just tilt it to you.
Around like that, huh? Can y'all hear me now? Oh, you probably heard me before. You know, well, I never expect this. Haven't won too many awards in my life. I have no trophies at my house. I do have a plaque for being a coach for some little kids and stuff like that about 3 years ago. Other than that, I have no trophies. This is going to be the big one that I'll probably put up in the ceiling that kind of But it actually had to do with the people in the city of Waynesboro and my life here. I am so blessed to know practically everybody in the room, you know, and the city, because, you know, working at the post office, and when I came over in '79, and they had never seen a black person stand up at the front window for nothing, and probably in the valley, and it was one of the best experiences I ever had. Practically met everybody, knew everybody. When they were walking in, I was walking to the bar getting in there. You know, that easy, you know. And the people I worked with, they were some of the best people I ever met in my life. Most of us was military men and women. But what spurred me to do this had to do with the people, because when I first got on Facebook about 12, well, however long ago, I saw a lot of flowers. I saw a lot of nice things to say, but I didn't see anything about the people, but really, you know. So it was pretty close to Black History Month, and this was taking me like 12 years into when I first moved back up on Port Republic Road back in 1998, and I went into the cemetery. And that's when I started seeing something that, as a child, you did not see. So I kept all that stuff, and then when, like I say, when I was in Richmond and got on Facebook, I didn't see something. What was missing was the people. So I began to dump everybody I knew, families. Then I said, you know, we always put things on here about people like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and this person, this person. I said, what about your uncle? What about your aunt? What about your next door neighbor? And you know, and so after a while, there it was. And again, knowing my city, I know it well. As a male person, you know this place well, you know what I'm saying? But what grieved me was I didn't realize that did I ever take time to grieve the people that I saw that were passing away. So all the stuff that I have is those people that passed away and many more. So for you guys to come down and be a part of this right here, I didn't do my research. You know, but I was doing it real fast, because when Mrs. Jackson asked me about my shoes, and you know, I dress like this most of the time, but very rarely do I wear sneakers with my clothes. I always use that for running or playing ball. So, and I said, oh, my shoes. And so then after a while, when I started seeing it right in the brain, just actually put it together, they did not do this, but what is this? You know, because when I started seeing Mariah, can I give it just a minute about Mariah? This family right here on the backside here. Would you all stand up for a minute, please? And we'll take the picture. I'm going to be very short. When I was a little boy, 11, go for it. The picture. Yeah. I can tell it, but they may not give me that time. Okay, all right. Sorry. And she didn't tell me. Believe it or not, I've been to her house before I came down here, and she said, well, I gotta go. I said, well, where you going? I need to tell you that. And she called her on the phone at the time I was talking to her, and she said, Mama, are you on the speaker? I said, no, I'll take it all for you. I said, she wouldn't take it. Okay. But I didn't realize it was on the phone. And I thank you, Lord. My son, grandson.
She's taking it. You want to take the mask off? No.
Yeah.
Okay, ready?
Everybody smile for me. Do another one. Smile. One more. Okay.
All right.
We take the other news out
Eh.
because then you want to have that meeting. And
And you guys are welcome to come back forward after the meeting's over.
Yeah, that's
It won't be
fine.
long. Yeah, go ahead. Finish it.
Bear with me a minute to say this.
Listen, I'm Mooneen Jackson. Most of you already know that. I think I've introduced myself. And when I started this process of trying to recognize Chris, it really was a wonderful journey, frankly, of meeting more people that he knew and just calling people in the cold, telling them what I wanted to do. And it was amazing, actually, that people were so interested in giving him a salute. So I'm not going to be here long, but along that journey, I really want to thank so many people, and I'm not going to name them all. But Terry is listening, Terry Howard, who is, he wanted to be here, he's from Georgia, and I know he's contacted a number of you. And Marjorie, who is the sister of Chris, and Sheila, Amadi, and I want to recognize Jerry and Kay Venable, who are really supposed to be on their honeymoon. They were married yesterday. And yes, so I'm grateful that they're here. And my buddy Roger, who changed his plans to be out of state. Now, I know a whole lot of other people did that. And Nan and Mariah. Okay, well, Chris will tell you that story. But what I want to really just say is thank you, Julia, first of all, for shepherding this process for me. Because I know I bugged you a lot. And I thank the mayor and council for really giving us this opportunity to honor one of our own. And it's a joy. And Chris, I hope that you know at this point that you are loved by a lot of people.
Back in about, all of my tell it how old I am, okay? Around 1961. And I was looking for some work as a little boy. And it was winter time, and I was out shoveling snow, trying to shovel some snow, and I didn't have a shovel. So I was trying to shovel some snow if I had got a shovel, right? Does that sound like okay? And Mariah's grandmother over on Florence Avenue, Mrs. B.B. Massey, or Miss Margaret Massey, she was a school teacher at Waynesboro High School. This is 61. So the grandma let me use the shovel to go out and shovel snow. And her grandmother said, how you know he's coming back? Oh, I guess you figure he'll be back. You know what I'm saying? So from that day on, I worked for her grandmother coming over in the morning times during the 1961 to about 1965. And then Jerry, my brother, he took it over after that. And so over the years of working for Miss Bass and whatnot, like that, treated me like a child. So I ran into Mariah, this is, like I said, 61 to 65, but I ran into Mariah this past summer, did not even know she was even living and such. And I was driving a shuttle bus from the winery back to the hotel. She was at a wedding. And she was talking about her family living here, and when she made it to the name, I said, oh, you talking about B.B. Massey? And then I strung Mariah on about a 20-minute ride all the way back to the hotel. And Kent, what is he doing these days? And she said, who are you? And I said, yeah, but and Bland was one of the sweetest persons I had ever met. And I just kept doing it to her, but the reason why they have it here and where they come from. she needed to know maybe a little bit more about her grandma, and I was the connecting piece in Waynesboro about her grandma, and it's so sweet. And they came in from everywhere to see me about a month ago together. Yeah, so man, this little girl became, and now she's a woman today, and she just wanted to know a lot, and the family is associated with Massey's Meal. Yeah.
All my church members, my church family is here. Would you all please stand up for a minute? And when I saw one of them, I said, oh, God. What kind of problem do you all have? But anyway, thank you so much, brother.
All right, Chris, if you get, Chris, after this, if you guys want to take additional pictures in here, you're welcome to, but let us get through the meeting, and then you guys can take all the pictures you want, okay? Okay. All right, item number 8 is to receive a proclamation November 22 as National American Heritage Month in the city of Waynesboro. Dr. Hofstetter is going to read this proclamation for us.
All righty, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Proclamation for National American Indian Heritage Month. Whereas the history and culture of our great nation have been significantly influenced by Native Americans and indigenous peoples, and whereas the contributions of Native Americans have enhanced the freedom, prosperity, and greatness of America today, and whereas their customs and traditions are respected and celebrated as part of a rich legacy throughout the United States, and whereas Native American Awareness Week began in 1976, and recognition was expanded by Congress and approved by President George Bush in August of 1990, designating the month of November as National American Indian Heritage Month. And whereas in honor of National American Indian Heritage Month, community celebrations as well as numerous cultural, artistic, educational, and historical activities have been planned. Therefore, Mr. Mayor Bobby Henderson, by virtue of the authority invested in him, proclaims this American Indian Heritage Month and urges all citizens to observe this month with appropriate programs and ceremonies. So there we go.
Thank you, Dr. Hofstetter. All right, that brings us to item number 9, and item number 9 is to hold a public hearing and consider introducing an ordinance granting a conditional use permit for accessory building unit, ADU, at 1527 Red Top Orchard Road, Waynesboro. You got to move that mic, don't you?
Bring it around. It's okay. Okay, so this is a request. We need to hold a public hearing to consider introducing an ordinance that would grant a conditional use permit for an accessory dwelling unit or an accessory apartment at 1527 Red Top Orchard Road. Let's see if this is going to work. I don't know why it doesn't want to move.
There you go.
I think we can get by without it. If we need something,
Okay.
we'll go there. So this is for an accessory dwelling unit that is larger than what is currently permitted in the zoning ordinance. So the zoning ordinance would allow a 600 square foot detached accessory dwelling unit. And this is for a larger size, and that's the reason it is a conditional use permit. So the city permits attached and detached accessory dwelling units, referred to as accessory apartments in our zoning ordinance, by right in single-family detached dwellings if they meet that certain size. And again, the reason this is a conditional use permit is because it is for greater than that size. So in order to approve a conditional use permit, council must find that the proposed use is consistent with good zoning practice and that it wouldn't have an adverse effect on health, safety, or comfort of persons living or working in the area and would not be detrimental to property or surrounding improvements. So the property is located at the corner of Red Top Orchard Road and Kaiser Court, and it's on the west side of Waynesboro. The property is north of Interstate 64 and west of the Rosser and Ludwig commercial areas. So just to kind of give a little background, everyone's aware of what an accessory dwelling unit is. They've called various names. You might have heard them called granny flats or backyard bungalows or carriage houses, in-law suites, and really the general practice is that they range in size. They're anywhere from 600 to 1,000 square feet and typically have 1 or 2 bedrooms. So in our zoning ordinance, really the intent of the accessory apartment ordinance is to provide additional housing options that really provide, a benefit and convenience for families and households. You often think about this if you have an elderly family member that needs to be close, or, adult children that are kind of coming back to live near family. So these are just showing you kind of what these types of units could look like if they be detached. In this case, it's a detached unit. Some are attached. There are some that are within a garage structure, and some kind of as a room within the house. So as I previously mentioned, this just shows the location. So it's right at the intersection of Kaiser Court and Red Top Orchard Road. So the applicant would like to construct an ADU larger than the 600 permitted. They at one time were interested in doing something a little larger than 1,000 square feet, but after some staff recommendations and then the recommendation of the Planning Commission, are amenable to the 1,000 square foot of interior livable area, and then no more than 200 square foot of outside kind of entryway, porch, or rear entry. The ordinance, like I said, permits the 600 square foot or 1/2 the size of the principal dwelling, whichever is less. This just shows that the principal dwelling is 2,000, close to 300 square foot. So 50% of that would be around 1,100 square feet. The reason for the larger size is really to accommodate 2 senior unmarried relatives, so they need a little bit more, bedroom space than would be traditional. This shows just a floor plan that was provided, so you can see on the left the existing house, and then the detached accessory dwelling unit would be in the rear. So you can see that kind of superimposed there on the left, and then the drawing plans that just kind of show the bedroom and kitchen and laundry area of that proposed accessory dwelling unit. The applicant's architect also just kind of provided some drawings of what the dwelling unit would look like. This is a picture of the property, so the principal house you can see there, and so in that wooded area, so it's my understanding that probably a significant amount of that vegetation would need to come down to locate the accessory dwelling unit behind the home. And so this is kind of from the side view on Kaiser Court, looking at where the accessory dwelling unit, the proposed dwelling unit, would be built. And then this kind of superimposes the existing house drawing and the location of the accessory dwelling unit onto the aerial, so you can kind of see, from a bird's eye view where it would be located on the lot and kind of the distances from the surrounding properties. And it would be accessed by a driveway off of Kaiser Court. So again, the accessory apartment ordinance section lays out certain criteria, so that one of the criteria being that the owner of the property would occupy either the primary structure or the accessory apartment, and in this case the applicant is living in the primary home, and her father and aunt would need to be in the accessory dwelling unit. We do have a requirement that you have to have a minimum lot area of 10,000 square feet for detached apartments, and this is just noting that they clearly have that square footage. It is planned to be built as a separate structure on the rear of the property, and they will need to submit a minor site plan for review and approval with the zoning department prior to construction. A landscaped buffer, increased setbacks, or other measures may be required to mitigate the impact of such apartments on adjacent dwellings, and that's kind of something that's identified in our ordinance. So staff did recommend a vegetative buffer be planted between the proposed driveway and the property line to the rear, and it's identified that plantings would be determined during the site plan stage, so the specifics of that buffer could be determined then. And then the request, that's a typo there, is for a 1,000 square foot ADU, not to include the porch. And the Planning Commission and staff recommended that there be about 200 additional square feet of exterior area for the rear entry and the porch. This is just another image showing the location of the property. Again, just going through the code sections, manufactured homes cannot be used as detached accessory apartments, and clearly this is not. And then again, the apartments shall not unreasonably interfere with the use and enjoyment of adjacent property. The site does have adequate public water and sewer. Public Works did identify that the applicant would need to submit a fixture count sheet to determine if a second meter or upgrade would be needed. The comprehensive plan designates this property for low-density residential, so it does comply with the comprehensive plan, and it is zoned RS12, so it's a single-family residential large lot. So staff and the Planning Commission recommended that the proposed ADU would not detract from the existing neighborhood, and the applicant's use is within the intent of the ordinance to have people be able to age in place. So staff and the Planning Commission do recommend approval with the following two conditions: that the accessory apartment be limited to the sizes I've previously said, and that the vegetative plantings be provided to the property to the rear and determined during the site plan review stage. So that's all I have, unless you have any questions. And the applicant is here to speak to the request.
Any questions for Ms. Tate?
If you could go back to one of the aerial shots, would the driveway be behind?
Yes, so it is,
That structure?
yes, it is a little hard to see on this, but yes, the driveway would be behind, and so then the plantings would be between the driveway and the adjacent property. So yeah, their
of course, that would
driveway
be-
would be blocked too, essentially, or screened.
I am all for aging in place, so I think that's a great idea, but certainly want to respect the neighbors who are looking at trees right now and may not want to look at the
And
back
we-
of the house so close.
And we did receive a letter from that neighbor that was in support of the request, but did mention, the possibility of having some kind of fence or vegetative buffer, so that is something we have worked into the request.
Perfect, good.
All right. Before I open the public hearing, Mr. Wilmot's party is kind of left. If anybody else wants to leave now before I open the public hearing, or if you want to stay for the public hearing, you're welcome to do so. All righty. I hereby open the public hearing, hold a public hearing to introduce the rezoning of 1527 Red Top Orchard Road.
So yes, sir, we have two individuals signed up to speak. Mr. Glenn Slack, who signed up first, but I'm going to call on, hold on, Mr. Slack. I'm going to call on Ms. Lauren Sandercock, who's actually the applicant. So we'll have the applicant go first, and then we'll have Mr. Slack speak. If that's okay.
And if you don't want to speak, you don't have to speak.
Thank you all for hearing our request. Thank you so much for your hard work on this. Aging is not easy. I know. I'm so thankful that I've had two wonderful parents and an aunt who have supported me unconditionally. We lost my mom to COVID in 2020, and now the situation is my dad and my aunt need housing. And at this point. And I think everything has really been covered. I don't really have anything extra to add to this point, but just thank you for hearing and considering our request.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Okay, Mr. Slack.
Thank you. We appreciate this opportunity. I don't have anything to add. I just signed up in case there were questions that someone would have had of us, and I would be able to speak at that point. But I don't have anything to add. I do have one thing to add. This is my first experience with a conditional use permit, and if everybody that has a conditional use permit could get the cooperation that we've gotten from the planning department, it would be a wonderful process. I have nothing but praises for the staff that have worked diligently to get this conditional use permit to this point. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
That's it,
That's
Mr.
it? All right. I hereby close the public hearing. Any council members have comments or, no? Is there a motion to introduce the ordinance?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Allen.
And I'll second it.
Thank you, Dr. Hofstadter. All right, this will be read again on November 28th at our next meeting. So thank you all very much. All right. Item number 10 is to consider adopting a resolution supporting the Highway Safety Improvement Program grant. Ms. Tate, you're up again.
Okay, so the Virginia Highway Safety Improvement Program, we refer to it as HSIP, is funded by federal and state safety funding to implement safety improvements across kind of the Virginia roadway network. VDOT certainly works on certain systemic improvements on public roads, but then also there is the possibility for localities who maintain their own streets to apply for safety funding. And with that safety funding through this Highway Safety Improvement Program, they really focus on 6 systemic issues that can be considered. So one is high visibility signal backplates, so kind of the more reflective backplate that is on all kind of VDOT maintained traffic signals. Pedestrian crossings, which can kind of cover a range of treatments, so high visibility crosswalks, rapid flashing beacons, pedestrian push signals, ADA compliant ramps, advanced warning signage, so the treatment will be different depending on the intersection, but all of that can be covered with this HSIP funding. The next is looking at unsignalized intersections. The flashing yellow arrow is another improvement. Road diets, and then curve delineation or, kind of some additional warning signage around, tricky curves that have kind of a high crash data related to them. Staff has been working with VDOT staff and also the Safety Circuit Rider program to kind of do an analysis of, what does the data say are our highest crash point areas, and then kind of work through those first to go after some of the funding related to these 6 systemic improvements. So we have made an application, so I'm going to describe the applications we have put in. They were due November 1st, and then this is just asking council to kind of a resolution of support for those applications to help with our scoring and processing of those applications. So we did 2 applications. One was for high visibility backplates and flashing yellow arrows. So we applied for the high visibility backplates on I believe it was 20 intersections, and several of these you'll notice along Rosser Avenue. We did not apply for those because they're part of the larger smart scale project that will improve signal timing, so VDOT told us not to apply for those, but this would provide high visibility backplates at all of those locations, and I want to say it's anywhere from $800 to $1,000 for one intersection to have that high visibility backplate, so that would be covered with that application. And then of those 20 intersections, I believe there were 9, and it's covered in the resolution, or the resolution of support that would get the flashing yellow arrow. And those are about $10,000 per intersection. So you can see the priority is intersections with a protected permissive green or permissive green for left turn movements. And obviously you need to have a dedicated left turn lane, and just really creates a more safe environment, especially if there's a high rate of angle crashes at those locations. And then we also worked with VDOT staff to look at the data around, pedestrian crashes. And then, HSIP is about a crash modification factor, so your score is based on if there are crashes at that location. But then you can also include, and are encouraged to include, intersections where you might not have a specific crash data point, but that, there is some concern there around the safety of it being used as a pedestrian crossing. So I know this map is a little bit tricky to see, but I tried to go through and just ping the 15 different intersections where staff applied for some kind of pedestrian improvement. And again, that varies depending on if it's signalized or unsignalized, and kind of the if it's an existing pedestrian crossing, maybe it just needed advanced warning signage, or maybe a better high visibility crosswalk at that location. We did talk with VDOT staff about, kind of strategy around these applications and whether we should include all of them or only include the ones that we thought would score the best, because we kind of play that sometimes with smart scale. But we were told that, really just put everything in there, and it's a scalable program. And, based on that, they'll be able to come back and see what they would be able to fund related to the request. So we did kind of put in locations that maybe didn't have that crash history behind them, but were important. We worked with the Safe Routes to School coordinator to also identify some additional locations that hadn't shown up on the crash data. So all of that is in the resolution. I'm not going to read every intersection, but if you have any questions with any of those, I'd be happy to see if it was included on the list. But if approved, this resolution would be sent to those that are processing the applications as a supporting document to kind of help the scoring and see that it is supported by council.
What are the timelines on this, do you know?
So they were due November 1st, and we noted that we would be ready to implement some of the projects in spring of next year. So
Nice. Okay.
pretty quick turnaround on the funding. I think it's the program has just recently come back, so I think there are a lot of questions around, how much funding it'll be or what. So there are a lot of unknowns, but it is not a match program. So we just requested the funding, and we'll see if we receive any of it.
Thank you, Mr. Any other questions for Ms. Tate? All right. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution supporting the various HSIP grant applications?
I'll make that motion.
Who's that, Dr. Hossetter? Thank you, Dr. Hossetter. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Any discussion?
Employee of the VDOT will be abstaining.
Okay, I kind of thought that. All right, so Mr. Short will be abstaining because he's an employee of VDOT. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0, one abstain. All right, and that brings us to item number 11. Item number 11 is to consider adopting the Community Action Plan for Port Republic Road Neighborhood. Ms. Tate, you're up again. You're a popular person tonight.
I'm going to keep this really brief because we did present on this plan back in September and really went into the full details of the plan, the makeup of the advisory committee, all of the public meetings and workshops that were held, the 3 main goals of the action plan: to preserve Port Republic's historic resources, use the past to reinvest in the future, and improve overall quality of life. And we went, really into detail about all the action tables that were developed to carry out those 3 goals. So, I would be happy to answer any questions you have related to the plan. But at this time, after, much consideration on those action tables, staff is looking for council to kind of adopt that as a neighborhood plan, and then staff can use it as we look to future grant opportunities moving forward.
Any discussion on that? Is there a motion to adopt the resolution adopting the Port Republic Neighborhood Action Plan?
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Short, thank you.
And I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Dr. Hossetter. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right, and then item number, did I skip one here? No. No, item 12. Item 12 is to receive a report and consider introducing an ordinance amending Section 66-4 of the city code as it pertains to the city's bulk pickup knuckle boom program. Mr. Hamp.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. So this is, the bulk program is the service by which we collect large yard debris and bulk items such as furniture and appliances. I think most residents in the community, most elected officials and our staff are familiar with the program. It actually dates back in various forms to the early 1980s, at which time it was called the spring cleanup, and during a designated 2 or 3 week period would sort of be an all hands on deck operation from the Department of Public Works. Residents would take their yard clippings, tree, shrub clippings to the curb and whatever junk they could accumulate and remove from their garage and basements. And it was really quite an undertaking, but at the time it was believed that it was really a helpful beautification effort in our community. Though I'm doing the presenting tonight, I would like to recognize members of our staff who have done fairly extensive research on both the state of the current program and then options on how we might improve it. More specifically, I'd like to recognize Mr. Josh Burrows, who is a supervisor in our refuse division, Mr. Trafford McCrae, our Director of Public Works, who is here this evening, and Mr. Todd Wood, our Assistant City Manager in charge of operations. So tonight's presentation will cover what is our proposal to sort of address the problem or the challenge that we currently experience, what is driving the need to change, what is the nature of that challenge or problem, what do we hope as a staff to gain or improve about the program and its benefits. We'll obviously provide the council with program specifics. And finally, we'll talk about the fact that this is a first step in our eyes, and that while we hope it's successful in sort of righting the ship, so to speak, we don't purport that this will solve all problems associated with knuckle boom or refuse collection. And hopefully, I will do a sufficiently good job of explaining the proposal and the problem that the council will be comfortable introducing the ordinance which makes the recommended changes to the program this evening. That would be a 2-read. So what are we proposing? There are essentially four key components to the program amendments. First, we would recommend to the council that the bulk collection program, that we amend the program by eliminating the free pickups and instituting a pay-for-pickup model or a fee-for-service model. It's interesting to note, I think the last time that we examined the knuckle boom or the bulk service collection, I was reviewing some minutes, and the staff actually recommended at that time to reduce the number of free collections from 2 to 1. And council ultimately decided to retain the 2 free collections. But I want to emphasize, and I'll do this throughout the presentation this evening, your staff thinks that the free aspect of this program is really at the heart of the problem that we have and that we're trying to address. Secondly, we would recommend establishing a 2-tier refuse customer and non-refuse customer pricing structure, and that in addition to the fee-for-service or elimination of the free aspect of this program, we really need to strengthen adherence to the call-in or scheduling requirements. So at the heart of our problem is that by giving 2 free collections to all of our refuse collection customers, we're really creating a demand for service that we don't have sufficient resource to sustain or meet. And so what we think are key elements to righting the balance here are sort of meeting out the service by first charging for it, and two, really enforcing a structured call for service schedule to pick up approach. And finally, recognizing that moving from a free service to a fee-for-service model is challenging for an elected body, for our organization, and absolutely for our customers. One of the program elements, or a new program element we would recommend, is that we establish a drop-off area within our community, and we think that will be down at the Department of Public Works campus or site, where residents can deliver free of charge grindable organic waste. So you could take your tree limbs, bush clippings, shrub clippings, that type of thing, but not, we would not at this time be accepting couches and appliances and large bulk items like that. And again, we're trying to, recognizing that this will be a change, and some would view it as an unfavorable change for the customer. We're trying to balance that with some program elements that might be received as favorable. I would take the opportunity to remind everyone that residents of Waynesboro can deliver waste to the Jolly View Regional Landfill for free, and that's household waste, large waste, appliances, etc. So there's no charge for a Waynesboro resident to deliver that waste to the landfill, which is a pretty good service in and of itself. What is driving the change? So currently the system is not functioning satisfactorily, and I think customers would recognize that, our staff recognizes that, and simply we have piles that are sitting out too long before they're collected, and it sort of defeats the objective of beautifying the community. I think there's a need, secondly, to align the cost of the service with the revenue. I talked earlier about the genesis of this program being spring cleanup. At that time, it was funded, as best I can determine, and I'm fairly confident in this assessment, it was funded in the general fund, and so no fee was assessed for that spring cleanup service. When one season it took, and this is a bit of an exaggeration, but you'll get the point, that spring cleanup usually occurred in March or April. One year we got into mid-June before we were finished, and I think there was a common recognition that this model doesn't work anymore. The residents can generate more waste than we can collect in an efficient manner. And we moved from the spring cleanup model to a system in which we have the knuckle boom truck, and it was circulating through the community on a regular basis. And the thought being, if we can just collect the waste on a routine and cyclical matter, will eliminate this large accumulation and persistent accumulation of debris and waste in the community. And that worked with some success intermittently. But my point being that we moved that from a free service in the general fund to the refuse fund without a corresponding adjustment to the rate. And frankly, we don't adjust our refuse collection rate often, though we have recently, but that knuckle boom collection, that bulk collection, is embedded in the rate, and there's no reflection in what we charge the customer. Finally, some thought was given to, well, maybe we should just eliminate the collection capacity in total and just say we're not able to do this anymore. And that idea was dismissed pretty quickly, because it's important to the organization, and I think to serve the community, to retain that equipment and those staff to respond to windstorms, ice storms, and frankly to respond to illegal dumping problems that we have. So as an organization, we want to retain the capacity in terms of the equipment and the manpower to do that. And we don't disagree with the notion that if you're able to accomplish this service, it's to the benefit of homeowners and to the community generally. So what do we hope to gain? We hope to improve the effectiveness of the program, and thereby beautifying neighborhoods in the city. Again, reducing the amount of time that piles are sitting out, detracting from beauty and the aesthetic of the community. We want to maintain the bulk collection capability and make the program sustainable. again, it's important, we think, to keep the equipment, keep the manpower to respond to emergencies, and preserve the service in some form, and our recommendation would be a fee-for-service scheduled program. And enhance the compliance pickup aspects of the program. The fee or the freeness of the program we think is problematic in two respects. One is we obviously think financial support for the program is needed, but the freeness undermines our ability to enforce the scheduled aspect of what's in the program now. So if Mr. Wilhelm has a pile in front of his house and he hasn't called it in, our staff go and say, Mr. Wilhelm, you have a pile, you haven't scheduled it, and so I'm going to charge you for that collection. And Mr. Wilhelm says, well, I have 2 free ones, just charge it against one of my free ones. And so that puts our staff, and both field staff and administrative staff, in a difficult position trying to navigate the freeness and the lack of a schedule. And we really I want to emphasize in this presentation that the 2 key aspects are establishing some sort of fee and our staff's willing ability to stick to a scheduled program. We would also note that generating some revenue with the service we think will fortify our position in order to be able to maintain salaries that are competitive or comparable with our local competitors. Program specifics. So if approved, what does this look like on the ground? Piles of debris that are called in will be removed in the order that they are received. So we'll do a prioritization based on the order in which folks call. City refuse customers will be billed at $75 per load. So if you are a customer of city refuse collection, we will charge you $75 per load to come out and pick up your couch, your pile of tree limbs, an appliance, some combination thereof. If the city becomes aware of an unscheduled pile, so again, pick on Mr. Wilhelm. If Mr. Wilhelm is a customer and he has a pile that he's not called in, we're going to charge him the $75 plus a $40 processing fee after, and only after, and if he doesn't pick it up after 14 days notice. So we'll call him or send him a letter that says, Mr. Wilhelm, you have a pile. We don't have record of having scheduled a collection. You have 14 calendar days to remove the pile, or we'll remove it and charge you the 75 plus 40. Non-refuse customers, we recognize that there are a number of residents in our community that don't take trash service from the city. Those folks will have access to the service, but at a rate of $115. In a case, this is a little an important distinction. I don't think it detracts from the overall presentation, but if there is a tenant who is a customer but doesn't call in, we will bill the homeowner. So if we have a problem with scheduling and it's a renter in a single-family dwelling, we will bill the homeowner for that, not the renter. Things to consider, again, the free pickups are difficult to manage and undermine the overall program. I think, again, we have a service demand that exceeds our ability to deliver the service. And the freeness of it undermines actually, too, our ability to assign or connect a pile with a customer. The proposed program is a trade-off between the demand for service and the capacity of the department to provide the service. This program will not solve all citizen refuse challenges. We want to acknowledge that. We'll get 6 or 12 months into this and do an assessment of see how we're doing. And maybe there are things we want to change, or maybe there'll be an opportunity to enhance service, but we're not sure. But we want to make sure that we understand our goal in making these recommendations is simply to get that division on good balance so that we can recover. We're pretty far behind currently. And in fact, if the council sees fit to approve these changes, there's a fairly extensive communication process that we'll go through in November and December, and it probably will take 2 or 3 months to do a sort of an all-hands-on-deck catch-up, and then the real revised program probably won't begin until March or April. Is that an accurate description? Okay, great. And again, I've simply restated the bottom there. This is only the first, but hopefully significant step to redirecting this program toward greater effectiveness. I would like to point out too, probably on our list of things that should be mentioned, is that our folks want to do a good job. We take pride in our work, and especially that division, I think, has a good record of customer service. Not a perfect record of customer service. It's a perfect record is hard to achieve, but that refuse division has a really good reputation in the community. And I don't think our situation sets our employees up for success. And that's frustrating to customers when they see piles that sit out for extended periods of time. And it's frustrating for our employees who feel like they want to be successful. They want our customers to be satisfied, but really the formula of demand and resource is not available to put them in a position to be successful. So I want to mention that with gratitude and appreciation to the guys out in the field who are trying to get this done. So that's my presentation. I'm happy to respond to any questions that you might have.
Mike, I have one. Under your specifics for the program, it says if the city becomes aware of an unscheduled pile, the citizens will receive a letter. What is an unscheduled pile? Are we going to have a schedule to pick up piles, or?
So some of the wording here can be a little tricky. All that means it's a pile that we don't have record of someone having called for a collection.
Okay. So there won't be a schedule?
There's no schedule other than the one that we build from the fact that we have customers calling.
Anyone else have anything?
I had a couple things, and I imagine this will be on some of the literature that you put together, but you said that it's $75 a load. Is that the knuckle boom truck, or what is a load?
That's the knuckle boom truck.
Okay.
That's a straight box truck, right, or an open box truck?
I don't know. Can any of the gentlemen here quote the capacity on that? It's a fairly large,
So it's got
it's a large capacity.
crane and such. Yeah. And the second thing included in that, I know that the refuse folks will collect certain lawn items if they are tied up and broken and that kind of stuff. So that just needs to be clarified, what is still acceptable and what is not acceptable. And I don't know if you have those specifics in anything that people have been working on.
So in terms of the material or how it's presented?
How it's presented, and I mean, like bush shrubbery and stuff, the rule had been that if it is bound up in no more than 4-foot section, they would just pick it up with the trash.
So I'm not quite sure how to respond to that. So I think the amendments that we're proposing really are essentially the fee-for-service and the scheduling.
Okay.
And that as long as the material isn't dangerous, like don't put a can of oil out there or a barrel of oil or that kind of thing, they fall within our program parameters now. Presentation is not going to be...
Well, but again, my understanding was that was acceptable just in regular refuse pickup.
Oh.
And we just need to clarify that so that, how big a pile of brush is a bulk brush and how much brush is a regular scheduled pickup. And I don't know if there is something written down yet or not about that.
Mr. Wood or Mr. McCray, can either of you help me with that question?
If you want to take it.
Yeah, I can. So what I would say is that in general, the rule is, it's what you put out for trash is what for regular household waste is what's in your trash can. Because we have a fairly good level of service, we understand that sometimes you might overfill flow a bag, or you might have a bag of shrubbery or a bundle of sticks or whatever. One of our issues is that then if you, like the snow coning issue of where you pile completely over top of your trash can. So yes, if there's a bag of grass clippings there by the trash can, and that's something that happens once every few months, we're gonna grab it and go with it. We're not, that's not what we're trying to address. We're trying to address the cost of picking up mattresses,
Yeah.
appliances, things like that.
Okay.
Right, so now I think I understand better. If it can get into the trash can, if you have a small lot and a small gardening effort, and once or twice a year you have a hefty bag that can fit in, put it in. If it sits beside once or twice a year, we're going to get it. And frankly, we're trying to create opportunities through the drop-off site, through free access to the landfill, to keep waste out of that knuckle boom stream and really leave that focus for the big stuff that's difficult to handle.
And I guess the last question I have, would you anticipate a new hire? Maybe this is for Travis again. Or is this going to be hopefully less work that can be now handled by the crew that you've got?
So we anticipate having a contract with a private hauler to get through the catch-up phase. And then it's our belief, I believe, that we can, once caught up, we can manage the program with existing staff resource and equipment resource.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would just say that I think want to applaud staff's effort for addressing this. I mean, this is one of those topics that, believe it or not, for the folks at home, and we can spend a lot of time talking about, because there's a lot of whats and ifs that you can put in to a bucket to sort of figure out the right solution. So appreciate that. I absolutely believe that we've got to get to a pay for haul, a pay for service. Like I said, 75 gives me pause in that when you compare that to the other, our neighboring markets or neighboring communities, seems large. I think I'm concerned about the senior, Mr. Allen and I talked about it, I'm concerned about, the senior citizen that wants to do the right thing, tidying up their lawn. They set it out, they know the city's guidelines, they pay $75. Meanwhile, a contractor or someone doing major renovations on their home also pays $75. And so I think there's a certain, the analogy I was thinking about it during your presentation was, whenever anybody goes to pick up mulch, Heather and I stopped getting mulch at the big box stores for a while. We go to a lawn care company or a landscaping company, and we buy a scoop. And DeBose helps us out with that, as a matter of fact. And we get a scoop, and you pay for X number of scoops. And so if we were to do the inverse here of a claw, right? So 1 claw pickup is this, 2 claw pickup is that. 3 claw pickup is X, and to using the Charlottesville model, so that was one thing was in our packet for the folks at home that may not know, is that in Charlottesville, there's 3 tiers. First is $35, second one is $50, I think, and then the third call is for $100. Now, that doesn't have to do anything with a claw, but if you were to sort of moderate the request where someone calls in and says, I have 1 claw, and the crew goes out and says, this is like 6 claws, well, then they'll get cited for not putting out what they said you all were coming out to go pick up. But at least it scales the program to the size of the debris that we're trying to, clean up the community with. And I'm literally flying by the seat of my pants as an idea.
Well, no, and what Terry says makes sense. I mean, if you pick up a quarter truck debris for somebody rather than the whole truck, let's break it down so that you're paying for what they're picked up.
Would there be any interest in, simplicity is a goal, it's not a stated goal for the presentation, but it is a goal for the program. Would the council be interested in simply reducing that base fee in the inaugural amendment to say $50? Or is the council more interested in less simple?
I would, less simple, because I don't think it's fair that we charge a lady who goes out and puts a pile out there that she's cleaning up her yard and trying to keep it looking attractive, and she's gonna be billed $75 or $50. When the next guy over here comes and he's got a whole load. And so we're gonna run that truck from here to Jolly View for $50. Whereas if we had 10 small pickups and they're being charged $25 or $50 each, it'll still make more money to pay for the guy going. I know it's gonna take him longer to go to 4 or 5 different stops, but I don't, you know, I told you earlier today, I don't think it's fair that there's going to be a one fee fits all. And when I know a lot of people who have used the service, but a lot of them kind of went to the old rule of 4 foot wide, 4 foot high, and 8 foot long. And that's what you were supposed to get for your free pickup. Well, we couldn't, I like what Mr. Short said about have a tier. If they come and that's what it is, or, you know, it's a scoop or a scoop and a half, it's a smaller fee. And then if it's a 3 or 4 or 8 scoops, then it's a larger fee.
How much?
I know that's not simple to police it and keep it, but I'm trying to be fair to the constituents.
Sure. How much less simple is your goal? Can we do go from 2 to say two options within the 75 or 3? And I'm speaking without consulting with the staff.
What if you went with the, I'm looking at the Charlottesville option, $35 for the first pickup, $50 if they come back and pick up again, then $100 for the third pickup, and then it's a user-based thing. If it's just the homeowner with a couple of small things in the spring they need picked up, $35. But if it's a lot of stuff that needs to be picked up, it goes up for the user.
To me, frankly, I don't know how Charlottesville is running their program, but I don't think we have the infrastructure to do that. $35 is, I'd like to see how they pay for that.
Yeah.
Well, I think they go along with Mr. Allen. $35, you're getting a scoop picked up, but you're picking up at multiple locations before you go to the dump.
But what I'm saying is, I'd like to know how many knuckle boom trucks they have, how many office personnel they have taking those, scheduling those collections, and what kind of infrastructure do they have to support that program?
Right, in my reading, and I may be wrong, but is incidents, that the first time you call them, they charge you $35, the second day you call them. So it's not a matter of scoops.
Yeah, no, it's the first load.
Visits.
First load's $35, the second load's
Yeah.
$50.
Well, is it load or is it visits, meaning I call you this month, I call you next month, you charge me a higher price for the next one?
Right, I'm reading it as $35 for the first call, $50 for the second call, $100 for the third call.
Right.
But that is to fill up the whole truck?
Well, we don't
That's
know.
to fill up whatever the load is. I mean, it gets to that point, because again, the folks that are tidying up their yard, I told the folks that this is something we could talk about for a while.
Yeah.
Is that $35, you know, it could be a small collection, it could be a large, that's why I was rolling around in my head about, you know, going over to Waynesboro Garden Center and doing a 1 scoop, 2 scoop, 3 scoop, 4 scoop.
I'm going to throw a question. As you have said, Mike, this is a pilot program. I would say let's stay with one fee and see what occurs and keep some records and see if that's really, if there really needs to be a gradation of pickups, or if, we find the middle zone saying, yes, that's more money than somebody might have spent, if they have a small fee load, but it is keeping people from, overusing the system, which is part of what we're trying to figure out.
Mm-hmm.
So what's your starting number?
I mean, a 75 is fine with me, 50 would be fine with me. Again, if there is vegetation drop-off in the city, that's going to take a lot of those things. We're talking about the homeowner that's cleaning up their yard. If they can get it down to the drop-off, they don't need to pay anything. It's the folks that either have a great deal that they cannot move, or they have the other non-organic materials. But again, let's get some information under our belt before we try to make it too complicated.
So-
I feel like this is Shark Tank all of a sudden, isn't this something?
Bruce, 35, something you would be good with.
How often do they have to?
Why don't we just say, let's start with
I
35?
mean, is that
Starting if it's not enough.
Well, that's the thing. You could have somebody get a pilot that filled his room.
clear the whole house?
Yeah,
That's what-
Yeah, I mean, but again, the other side of what we're trying
Would
to
y'all
do
be good with
is
35?
make a bottleneck, quite frankly, right? And 35 might not be enough for a
do
bottleneck.
it, run it for
You know,
35.
we get behind again,
I think
Running it now.
eat it again.
I know, I think you need 50.
Yeah, 45.
I mean, I'd be okay with doing it as a pilot for 50,
Okay.
reapproach it in 6 months. And then,
Maybe do it
and then,
two
but we gotta talk about the $40 penalty.
So, so here's an observation, that really timeliness was part of the presentation that I didn't emphasize. Our goal was to get council in a position to introduce tonight and adopt on the 28th of November, and then that gives us the opportunity to get information in, I think, December utility bills and start a catch-up process that would begin in January and last 2 or 3, hopefully 2 months with some good weather. And then we start the new amended program in March. If we push that out, all we're doing is pushing out the start of the new program. And so if the council would like the staff to go back and develop some different options in terms of pricing, we just push out into the future. Now, what becomes a concern for us is part of the catch-up was going to occur in the wintertime and can be a slower, we don't generate as much wood waste, and it's a good time to catch up. But we want to have the program in place by the time spring breaks. So that's a sort of a rambling way of saying, do you want to pause for a meeting, let your staff regroup, and come back with some options around pricing?
Works for me.
Yeah. I would just, to interject one more item is, what really gave me pause was, and I got it because it's simpler, of tying the utility cutoff reconnect fee of $40 to it. It seems very excessive. I mean, we don't have, obviously, we have staff time running out to a location and inspecting a location, but it's also not, I think it's just a different context. So a $40 hit seems excessive to me. I'd prefer to see the $40 hit on a non-customer than on a paying customer who may have just very innocently moved heavy furniture or material out to an alley, only to now have 14 days to, by the grace of God, move it back into their property. And then if they don't, they're going to get hit with the fee and a $40 fee. That just seemed excessive to me.
And you said that the collection of these fees would fall back on the owner of the property and not if it's a renter. And we tried to do this several years ago. Y'all wanted to make the water bills that if the customer comes in, the renter, and he opens up the account, and then he doesn't pay it, and it gets up to whatever amount, and then he packs his bag and leaves, you wanted to go to the person that owned the property and say, well, you owe this. Well, he didn't collect the service, the renter did. And my thought is, we're making a landowner a collector for the city. I mean, when you go and get, Dominion Gas or Dominion Electric or cable, they don't come, if the people don't pay the bill, they don't come to the person that owns the house and go, you need to pay this, because they didn't get that service. The people renting. And I think it ought to still go to the people that have the contract, to come in and apply for the service. We have their information. We can go after them civilly if we want the money. And I would rather leave it like it is with our water and everything else. I don't want to be I'm out here doing the collection for the city when y'all are getting the money for the service, and I'm getting nothing. Now, if it's a rental place and the people skip out on the guy that owns the place, and they, leave it, like the house over on Oak Avenue when it had all the pallets in front of it, who paid to clean that up? Did we bill the owner or whatever? Do you remember?
I don't recall. I think we compelled the owner to clean it up. I think the owner bore the expense, but they also did the work associated with it.
I think for somebody that comes in and they take our service, and then we want to expect somebody else to be responsible for the bill. I'm not in favor of that.
Okay.
Mr. Allen, if they have a trash account, we bill them.
The person that has the trash.
Yes.
Not the.
That's
owner
correct.
of it.
That's-
Well, kind of what he said there a minute ago, it sounded like there was a violation that was going to be sent to,
That's if there's not an account holder.
if it's not an account.
That's right. And that's
then
the way,
no problem.
and that's where our code is written.
You're right, if they don't have our account, then definitely go after them.
So Melissa, do we need,
Saves a lot of time there, Mr. Woods.
do we need a
Making
motion
sure I
to
was
table?
right first.
Do we need a motion to table?
Yes.
Is there a motion to table this?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Short. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion's tabled until you bring us back something else, Mike.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Mike, you're up again.
Shoot. What do we got?
Communications, correspondence, and calendar.
All right. Let's try to get our work done on this on December the 12th. And staff would encourage the council to consider canceling the December 26th meeting. So if you guys can, and lady can think about that, we have a couple opportunities to do that. This is a fun little correspondence item. Mayor Henderson and Vice Mayor Williams entertained classes from Winona Elementary School, and a little lesson in local government and civics. And the clerk received thank you notes from members of those classes. So under the heading of correspondence to the mayor and vice mayor, I shared these thank you notes.
Thank you, Mike.
You're welcome. And that's all I have.
All right. All right. Do we have anybody signed up for citizen comment tonight?
We do, Miss Evelyn Cotton.
Ms. Cotton, come forward, please. Ms. Cotton, you know the rules, 4 minutes, prime time.
Can we turn our lights back up?
Yeah. Don't turn those lights on, Ms. Vice Mayor's getting a headache from the glare on it.
Oh, no, it was the dark light.
It could be because I'm so bright.
Better up. Bright is great.
Good evening. Hope y'all are doing well. I don't think the bulk item stuff is complicated enough, so let me add one more thing. The timeliness on the pickups, the side that wasn't really covered is that as a citizen, when you're calling for the pickup, they don't want you to call they want you to call before you put your things out. And I'm on a property that doesn't have alley access, so my stuff going out has to go onto the main street on 14th. And if I call before I put the stuff out, they will inevitably come before I get the stuff out. And so I'm in that spot, and I'm trying to get as much as I can in the load so I don't have to end up making the city come 2 or 3 times. So it might be nice to put something in that structure to say, and if you're going to time it, say call 2 weeks in advance, so I know I have 2 weeks, so I know I can get helpers to help me get the stuff out in time for the pickup, and put a limit on how long it's going to be out there, because right now it's apparently going to be out there 2 or 3 months if you're at the end of the list, if we're that far behind. But once we get caught up, you guys should be working faster in theory, so you really might want to build a little bit of buffer in there for our consideration. And then I actually wanted to speak on the highway safety stuff that you're doing, all the things that were approved in number 10. The high visibility signal backplates, and perhaps I could speak with Ms. Tate about this individually, but I just want to point out that while those things are wonderful on traffic lights like were pictured in her presentation, where it's a black traffic light and you put a yellow
rectangle around it, boy, it makes it highly visible in the daytime and the nighttime. But when you put those on the traffic signals that have all yellow, then they disappear in the daytime, and you're really making it more dangerous. And I tell my driving students all the time, they didn't ask me before they started doing this. So here's my opportunity to say, I think it's a bad idea to put them on the yellow traffic lights. So if I would just appreciate if we could keep that in mind as we're going through and adding those, that either make the background black with a yellow surround or don't put the yellow surround on it, because we're out there driving in the daytime more than we are at night. So I think the bigger priority is the daytime visibility. And I would love to be in on, if there's a citizen input opportunity, I'd love to be in on these flashing yellow lights where they're going to be added, because the paperwork that went out didn't specified locations, intersections, but it didn't say directions. And many of our intersections have a left turn allowed on solid green in one direction, but not in the other direction. Or in even opposing directions don't always have the same signage or the same light permissions. So I would just urge you not to be adding more possibilities of turning left on green lights than are already there, because I think we're pushing the limits as it is. And that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Cotton. All right. No more citizen comments, so that brings us to Madam Vice Mayor. Item 15.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, I move this meeting be recessed and that the City Council of Waynesboro immediately reconvene in a closed meeting for the following purposes: discussion and consideration of the acquisition of real property for public purpose, where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body, as authorized by Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A3. The subject matter is the possible acquisition of real property for the fire station and city operations.
Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor. We have a motion. Is there a second on this motion?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Hofstadter. Any discussion? All right, this is a roll call vote. Ms. Bortle?
Mayor Henderson?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Williams?
Aye.
Councilman Allen? Councilman Short?
Aye.
Councilman Hostetler?
Aye.
We're now in closed session.
More like bedtime. Going to bed without supper.
Is there a motion to return to open session and clarify or certify the closed session?
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt the following resolution. Whereas the City of Waynesboro has convened a closed meeting on this date pursuant to the affirmative recorded vote and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. And whereas Section 2.2-3712 of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by this City Council that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the City Council of Waynesboro hereby certifies that to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed in a closed meeting to which this certification resolution applies. And only such business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the City Council of Waynesboro.
Is there a second?
Well, second.
Thank you, Mr. Short. Any discussion? Ms. Bordeaux, roll call, please.
Mayor Henderson?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Williams?
Aye.
Councilman Allen? Councilman Short?
Aye.
Councilman Hostover?
Aye.
Meeting's back in session. Item number 10, is there a motion to adjourn this meeting?
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Allen, thank you, sir. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Short. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Meeting adjourned.
Your sourdough.
What do you?